No more American debt. No American debt. That is a group that is headed by former New York Governor George Pataki, who is saying, listen, we better start paying attention to this stuff. You better be able to balance stuff. You'd be able to make income and money match with the outgoing funds, and he's with us. Mr. Governor, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Nice being with you.
Yeah, nice to have you here. Sorry to pass along the bad news about your Yankees.
We still have a couple of months to go.
Yeah, that's
plenty of time.
That sadly is quite true. All right, so
and man, if you guys get Albert Hainsworth, you won't be able to balance anything. Just put him on one side.
Well, as we've said, he is two of the best players out there.
Yeah, well, if they could divide them in half. But we'll see what happens.
All right. Hey, let's talk a little bit about the debt. No American debt. Is that pie in the sky, or are you serious about that?
No, I'm very serious about this. In fact, we started this up in the spring, long before Washington became front page news over the crisis of the debt ceiling. And the reason, Jeff, is very simple. Yes, we have a short-term crisis as to whether or not we can pay our bills come next week, but we have a long-term real problem as well, and it's more than a problem. It is something where, for the first time in the history of this country, we are stealing from our future to buy off interest groups and live beyond our means today. $1.65 trillion in deficit this year. And this president, if he gets his way, is going to drive up the American debt to about $25 trillion a decade from now. And it just really is diminishing this country, and certainly questioning whether our children and grandchildren are going to have the same opportunities that we have always had as Americans. So it's got to stop. It should stop now. And we've just got to send a very strong message to Washington that it cannot continue to be this business as usual.
Well, what exactly is the problem with the guys in D.C.? Do they not understand that, or they just simply don't care?
Well, no, I think you've seen a lot of people very serious about this, sadly, largely Republicans. Senator Toomey came up with a $7 trillion plan. Senator Coburn came up with a $9 trillion deficit reduction plan. The House Budget Chairman, Paul Ryan, came up with more than $6.2 trillion in deficit reduction measures. Harry Reid has done nothing for 2.5 years until he just put out this lame thing in the last day or two. And the only one who hasn't proposed anything is President Obama. He's the man without a plan. He has spent years, 2.5 years, with record spending and entitlement growth that we can't afford, and now he's demonizing the Republicans when he's the one who has been really absent on this issue. So we need a solution. We need Republicans to work together. And Jeff, one of the sad things is that this president appointed a bipartisan commission almost a year ago. Yeah. They came up with $4 trillion in deficit reduction measures, and he ignored it. He basically threw it in the garbage can because he disagrees with the fact that it lowers the tax rates.
Is he fundamentally an empty suit?
I think he's fundamentally an ideologue who believes in massive government spending increases, believes in redistribution, and as part of any solution, as we've heard time and again, is insisting that we raise taxes on small business owners at a time when we need to create jobs. And I think he's trapped in this ideology of class warfare, tax the so-called rich, redistribute money, and grow government programs, whether or not you have the revenue. And it's just tragic for this country. He has run up more debt, or he will in 4 years, than any president has in 8 years. Yeah. And we just cannot allow this to continue. So, we have this short-term immediate crisis in Washington right now. We cannot allow this to get beyond the next election so this president can ignore the fact that he is spending us into oblivion.
Now, Governor, you, of course, longtime governor of New York State, balancing budgets, growing the economy in New York, trying to bring people in. They're doing a fine job. You're out in front of this debt issue. You're visiting places like New Hampshire and Iowa. Governor, inquiring minds would like to know.
Well, Jeff, I really am seriously thinking about running. I'm going to be at St. Anselm's in Manchester later this morning, and then we had the Republican debate there, and there was very little focus on this deficit issue at all. Right. And I think to beat this president, people know how bad he has been, I believe, but you can't just continue to point that out. You have to have solutions. Mm-hmm. And I have yet to hear a Republican candidate stand up and make getting rid of the debt and the deficit a cornerstone of their campaign and offer specific solutions. When I was governor, I had to do that. I I inherited a massive multi-billion-dollar deficit. When I left, we had a $3 billion surplus. And by the way, what you said earlier is very important. It's not just reducing the size and the cost of government. We have to do that, but we also have to grow the private sector economy because a budget has two sides, expense and revenues. And this president just continues to squeeze the small businesses with things like Obamacare and very tough regulatory proposals or demands. And we're not creating jobs, so we need to grow the private sector economy, shrink the federal government so that we can lower its cost and lower its size and lower the burden it places on the American people. And I have not seen a Republican candidate yet make this the cornerstone of what they will do if they take office, as I hope a Republican does come January of 2013.
All right, so, Governor, are you going to reach out to the Republicans who are already announced in the race and say, listen, we've got to focus more on this, or are you going to pull the plug at some point and say, you know what, I'm getting into this thing because I have no other choice?
Well, I'm certainly giving it serious consideration because I don't think the Republican candidates should need somebody to prompt them and say, oh, by the way, have you noticed that we're going to have $25 trillion in deficit 10 years from now if we don't do something about federal spending? I think everybody, even your listeners and the average voter, understands that we are really at a crisis of unsustainability where we're diminishing the future of this country. And, think about it, Jeff. Never in the history of America have we stolen, engaged in generational theft. And the young people who supported President Obama so strongly 2.5 years ago are the ones who really are being mistreated here. If you're a young kid out of school starting your first job, you owe $129,000 to the federal government. And by the way, it's hard to get a job because the burdens they've placed on the private sector are so great that we're not hiring. So I think there shouldn't be a need for any candidate who wants to be president to be prodded that this matters. I think every American voter understands that this matters enormously.
I have a feeling we'll be talking again. It's been a pleasure, and I'll look forward to it.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Good being on with you. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Governor George Pataki, former governor of New York State. Correct me if I'm right here. Did he sound a little fired up, a little pumped up? Sound like somebody who, I don't know, might be running for president of the United States? I don't know. He seemed to be hitting on all cylinders there. We'll certainly talk with him again. There's no doubt about it. He is going to be in New Hampshire today. Well, he is in New Hampshire. Let me rephrase that. He'll be appearing as part of the New Hampshire Institute of Politics event at St. Anselm today from 9 until 10 in the morning.